there was a guy who entered a joke, like a stand-up comedy contest, and he entered it as a representative of an AI bot, where he basically said, I'm not going to write any jokes. I'm just going to give you jokes that the bot gives me as I type them in and see how far I can get in the contest. And it was like an epic fail. And it was very interesting to see kind of get behind, like, okay, how does an AI like think, quote unquote.
You're listening to the Remarka Brand podcast, where authentic brands win.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Remarka Brand podcast. This is Mike Jones with my double co-host today, Sam Bagel and Chris Stadler. We're going full radio voice today, I think that's what's happening.
Mike. I like it.
All right. We're going to be talking all about AI today, everyone's favorite topic. We have not yet burned ourselves completely out on the AI topic since our last episode on Inbound. I think maybe we're getting close, though. I think we might be a little tired of AI, but we got to keep talking about it because it's really important. And we have some really interesting things to consider when talking about AI with your writing, your blogging, your content that you're putting together. So we're really excited to talk about that. And before we do, Sam...
Oh, we got to name 10 things, and this is a good one today because I think this actually will, for our listeners and our viewers, have some practical real-world applications, guys, because we're going to name 10 use cases that you should not use AI for, okay? 10 things you should not use AI for, Mike.
So are we even going to have anything to talk about after this?
Yes, I think so. Mike said mowing
your
lawn.
Don't AI your lawn, or you might end up with a hairless dog.
That's good.
Oh, that's really good
right there. I'm going to go ahead and say, do not use AI to raise your children. That probably won't work. Chris, what do you got?
Well, I was going to say, don't use AI to write your wife a love note. But
that's a good one. Yeah, classic.
But you did, didn't you?
Actually, might be a good idea to start with.
Just to unblank the page.
Give me some ideas. Unblank the page for me, AI.
All right. We're generating some good ideas here already. Mike, what do you got?
Feed in your wife's persona. Give it some info. I'm going to go, don't AI your next cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Coffee is too important, people.
Probably not good.
Yeah.
Probably not good. Don't let AI... diagnose your car problems that you had this morning.
One of these days, maybe.
That's so close to my one, Sam. I was going to say, don't let AI change your oil.
Oh, that's good too. Yep.
It always strips that nut in there and leaks everywhere.
It does.
I mean, it'll use like English instead of metric and strip your oil nut.
All right, Mike, what do you got?
I'm going to go with don't use AI to write your congressman.
Okay.
I don't really know why you wouldn't do that, but I just think like, hey, on principle.
Yeah. Well, I just think if they're not going to read it, I'm not going to write it. So you might as well use AI, right?
Yeah.
Don't use AI to read all of your constituents' emails.
Okay, yes. Well, that actually might be a good idea too, Mike. You're coming up with good ideas. I'm going to say, don't let AI be your dentist. We all know what AI does with teeth.
Don't use AI to feed your dog, because I feel like it would be a softie and it would overfeed your dog and you'd have a fat dog.
Why is AI a softie? We'll get into that later.
Last one, Mike.
It's always saying
yes. Don't AI your next holiday Christmas family photo.
Ooh,
because your children need just 2 arms.
That'd be a nightmare. That'd be a good Halloween card, because everybody sends out Halloween cards, right?
Everything's just like a little bit off.
Yeah.
Like every person's arms are like just a hair too skinny.
And too long.
Long.
Yes.
Like alien arms.
Scary stuff.
Find your frequency.
All right. Well, that was awesome. All right, Chris, why don't you give us a little intro and ask us our first question, since you've been kind of thinking a lot about AI and content writing and how brands should be thinking about that.
I have been thinking about it a lot, and I've been working it into writing processes, and I've learned a lot from that. So, uh, yeah, this is one of my favorite topics right now. How do you get more? How do you get AI to do stuff for you, but then still do your job, do great stuff, right? Do great work. And so, but first of all, I wanted to ask you guys, why are we doing this podcast? Why do we want to help other people, our clients, the audience out there? Why do we want to help people understand how to do this?
You mean with AI?
Yeah, why do we want to help everybody? What are we trying to do?
I think it's, we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but I think we're starting to see that it's helpful to have a policy, whether that's you personally or you within your firm, to know and understand what do we do with AI as a firm, or what do I do? How comfortable am I with it? And then start to build some policies around it. And we know that a lot of firms have already done that, and have started to do that, to be careful, but really kind of goes down to your core ethos. Like, what do you believe? And then where does AI fit into that?
Yeah, and I think obviously AI is hot, right? It's a popular tool. It's a topic. It's kind of coming up a lot for a lot of firms, not only just in their marketing, but really in all of the work that they're doing, and especially for anyone doing B2B services, you're in professional services or financial services, especially tech companies. AI is getting embedded in almost everything that you do, or at least should be considered, or it's being forced on you to some degree. And so, like, I think part of the reason we're talking about it is just because it is this issue that everyone is dealing with. And we want to really think about, how do we, as people who believe in authentic brands and brands that are true and honest to who they are, how should they approach AI as a tool in especially their like communication and in how they develop their identity through all of their content that they're putting out into the universe? Because I think there's a lot of pitfalls that a lot of firms are going to start running into, if they're not already, of just starting to lose their sense of identity, lose their sense of personality, lose their sense of distinctiveness and what makes them remarkable and special and interesting, if they come about using AI in the wrong kind of ways. So I think for me, that's a really big reason why I want to have this conversation, why I think we need to like continue to have this conversation. I doubt this is a single episode conversation. Obviously, we're honing in on content today and content writing, particularly with like blogs and articles and that kind of thing. But I mean, this has much deeper implications for every brand, all the way from like the creation of your brand, right? And how you establish your primary like attributes, who you are as a firm, through, your core assets like logo and name and tagline, colors, fonts, your core messaging, your verbal guidelines, all the way through into like how you execute every one of your communication and marketing deliverables, especially for those on the marketing side of the business. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity to use AI and to make your processes more efficient. But I also think there's a ton of opportunity to just kind of lose your way really quickly when it comes to establishing a really unique and special brand. So that's why I'm excited about talking
we
about
joked about writing your wife a love note using AI. And there's a little bit of truth in that, right? Because like, you don't want to just use a tool and lose your soul a little bit, right? And that's kind of what we mean about, when it's branding and AI. How do you stay true to the brand while harnessing this great tool? We use it a lot, but you have to make sure that you're not using this cool new tool, and at the same time, you're kind of letting it run away and make decisions for you, that ultimately might mean, yeah, we're just not who we thought we were anymore.
I mean, didn't you guys ever wish when you're in school you could just create a robot of you and send it in place of you, and then it could come back from school and just kind of give you the high points?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, We all want to cheat at some level when we're not invested in the thing we're doing, right? And so I think to your example, Chris, it's like if you're going to treat your brand like school, this thing that you dread and you don't really want to do, and you want to go to market without doing any work, then AI seems very tempting to just kind of offload the whole process to it and sit back and go, I don't have to touch my marketing anymore. I think that there's a fundamental problem I have with that philosophy, and that is that you're not creating anything at that point, at least not anything that's true and not anything that's like really real. AI is not capable. We're clearly seeing this. AI is not capable of creating things that are fully original. It can't think for itself. It is, very replicative. Everything it's doing is derivative of something else that's already been created, often by a human being. And so as it gets used more and more, what's happening, at least what I'm seeing, is everything starts to look and sound the same that comes out of AI, because it's only as good as the inputs that are given to it. One, this like bank of knowledge of content and imagery and like pieces of data that have already been fed to it. And I have heard from people on like the data science side of this that they're already concerned that there's not enough knowledge categorized and collected by human beings for AI to get much smarter than it is today and more original than it is today. Like they are hungry. Like they are like, we've absorbed most of the internet that's public into these AI engines and fed them these data sets. And now they're looking at like, well, where else can we get data? And they're looking at private libraries or private institutions who have lots of content like Reddit, Wall Street Journal, X or Twitter. But even then, a lot of that work is derivative, right? It's not all that interesting. And so I think there's a hard limit for anyone using AI to say, oh, we can just have it create for us, like wholesale. And then beyond like the data that's already been fed into the model to train it and that it's pulling from as a resource. The other issue is it's only as good as the inputs you give it, right? As a user. And I think a lot of users are lazy and they don't, copy paste inputs, prompts. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people selling whole sets of prompts for marketers.
Yep.
And it's like, man, that's just going to get very similar answers every single time, regardless of which brand, plops that into their chatbot or their AI bot. So,
yeah. Well, and I thought of another benefit too of us talking about this, because as I think about the people we know who are in marketing, how do you craft your career and how do you basically, where's AI's place in your work? And then how do you have to build so that you're going to be really valuable, so that you're not kind of doing work that AI could do, but you're focusing more on the original thinking. And so, creative process might actually become more of a topic, from now on. Like, how do you actually come up with new ideas and things like that?
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. Why shouldn't we just trust AI to write blog posts? Just set it free, man. Just let it go. Why can't we trust it?
Sam, you want to take a first stab?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. You can absolutely do that, Chris. You can put in 5 to 7 words and boom, you've got a 600 to 1,000 word blog post. That's going to sound like 1,000 other blogs online. And again, hey, maybe that'll get some people to come to your website. Maybe the SEO will be decent on there. But there's a couple reasons why I would not do that. Number one is people are starting to see AI writing like they see stock imagery. They can sense it right away in the first sentence or two, and boom, they're gone. Because honestly, people don't want to read something a robot wrote. They don't. Just like, I was just talking about this before we recorded. I cannot stand when you're going through YouTube and you come across this video that looks interesting, and right away it's an AI voice. And it's like, no, I don't care about this. I'm not here for robot chatter. I want to read or listen to something that a real human created.
I was
And
looking at a HubSpot blog post and I was like, wait a second, this article only has 4 fingers. I could tell it was AI. And I was
yeah,
just like, I'm going to read it anyway, but like,
It's because it had so much
says.
depth to it, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And the other thing is, just, if you're going to do hey, the fastest way to get a blog post is to have ChatGPT or Claude write me something real fast. I just don't have time to do it. Again, like there's going to be no personality to it. It's not going to give you a point of view. So it's not going to be interesting. It's just going to be, some random facts or some very vague facts that actually might not be true. So I'll start with those 2 things. What do you guys think?
I have a follow-up question, if I may, that for both of you guys. You mentioned point of view. Why is that the secret sauce? Why is that kind of a part of what AI, why is it so important, I guess?
Well, I mean, that goes back to brand, right? A brand without a point of view is not really a brand. It's just a show. And we see that, a lot of the industries we work in, that point of view is hard, right? It's really hard to come to a singular point of view as a company, as an organization. It's hard to be willing to like take the risk to lean in on that and make that your central message. I think there's a lot of fear of like, well, if we're not really broad and we don't talk about everything, which means you really don't talk about anything. If we don't cover every single industry and every single solution and every single topic that we possibly can and not offend anyone. So we don't want to have a point of view because we might offend like a potential client. I think that fear holds up a lot of brands. So the challenge I have with AI in this problem is that AI won't give you that point of view, right? So it's a lowest common denominator generator when it comes to whether it's imagery or content or video or anything else you're doing. It's giving you kind of like aggregate of all of humanity. Here's everything humanity has created over the last 40 years. We've trained the AI model on it, and it's going to execute kind of what it thinks the general populace expects when you put that prompt in, right? And so it's not interesting. It's not necessarily unique. It's going to feel derivative. It's going to feel very much like, oh, this feels like something else that is unique, but not quite, right? And for your firm in particular, it's just not going to have any kind of interesting point of view. And the reality is like point of view can only come from human beings. Mm-hmm. Right? To have a point of view means you have a singular view. Like I am a singular individual and I see things a certain way because of the unique set of experiences and history and biology and environment around me and how I think and the values that I hold, the things that drive me. And AI doesn't have any of those things. What AI has is aggregate data, right? So it has many points of view and then flattens those out. That's just how it works. That's fundamentally how it works. And maybe there's some data scientists out there that'll tell me I've got it totally wrong. But as far as I could tell, that's it. And you can kind of fake a little bit of point of view. You can say like, think like this kind of person and have a point of view, and that'll get you closer. But that's still an abstracted point of view from a real person or even from a company, because organizations can have a pretty unique point of view when they're really tight on a core set of values and on purpose and on the things that matter to them, right? The experience that they've had. That usually does flow from founders, right? And if they've done a really good job of building a tight culture, they're going to have more opportunity to have that point of view really like staked down and not stray from it or not let it become kind of fuzzy and really blurred out. So yeah, I don't know, Chris, if that totally answers your question, but
So are you guys saying that that point of view, having a point of view, actually makes you believable, interesting, convincing, uh, a legitimate strategic advantage in communication
Yeah.
in your market?
I mean, who do you want to hang out with that doesn't have a point of view, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In your personal life, why
Right.
would you want to hang out with brands that don't have a point of view, right? Especially in purchasing decisions that you feel like are really important to you or to your organization. Would you rather buy from like kind of like some amorphous, like unknown, doesn't have a point of view, isn't really clear on anything?
Right.
Uh, like time and time again, like marketing studies have shown, like clarity comes from being specific. And
Mm,
one way to become specific is to have a singular point of view and say, like, this is what we see in our industry. Here's what we see as right. Here's what we see as wrong. Here's how we do business. We do it this way and not that way. And we hold to these values, these fundamental beliefs about how the world works. And they don't have to be like, I think some people are like scared of like, well, we don't want to be like a religion. We don't want to have like that kind of specificity. And I don't think anyone's arguing that you need to be a religion to be a business.
a
In fact,
cult.
that'd probably be a bad idea. Although some of them do get kind of cultic, right?
Yeah.
They borrow things from religion and how religions have been built. Um, but part of that is having a point of view, right? Like that's interesting to people. People go, yeah, I agree to that. I subscribe to that. And a company doesn't have to have like some fundamental, like super like intense point of view on the entire world. They just need to have a point of view on their industry, right? On something that they are involved in. It doesn't have to be this like world changing cause either. I think some companies have gotten really hung up on that in the last like 20 years and thinking that like somehow we have to be like fundamental change makers across the entire world in every category. And it's like, no, just pick something. And hopefully it actually represents your culture and your brand and where you've come from and your history and the experience that you have, and maybe has something to do with your products and services, I hope. uh, so I'm getting a little ranty here, but
Yeah.
and we gotten off from AI, but AI won't give you those things. It will not
Yeah.
give you those things.
Yep. You have to remember too that people want to purchase from and work with other people, right? And that's especially in B2B, those personal relationships are everything. And so if the first impression is, oh, this company, this firm didn't have the time to like actually write this article and provide value to me and what I'm looking for, am I going to get the time that I need in this relationship? How would your wife feel? Oh, you didn't even have time to write me a love note for Valentine's Day? Okay, right? Like it's kind of that same energy of like, you don't have time to like write this out of like how you would approach this problem. Then what am I actually getting here? And the second thing is, to provide that value, if you have, a prospective client or somebody in your audience that is looking for something, why would they come back to you if that was their first impression? Couldn't they just do that themselves in ChatGPT? Because more and more people are using it, right? So, oh, this is ChatGPT. I could just go do that myself. Why am I even here, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
no
but
value provided.
how cool is it though that you could just start a company and not know anything about the industry? All you have to do is just have ChatGPT create all your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would
Yeah,
totally work.
I think there's and this is probably going to get to a question we need to start answering, which is, well, when can I use AI? When can I plug that into my process? If it's so like not helpful with my brand and helping me develop a point of view, be interesting, to stand out, to be specific, well, then what can I use it for? Can I use it? Should I use it? And I think that's maybe where, like, if you're doing research or you want to understand uh, not a point of view, but understand kind of like the aggregate point of view, right? The kind of humanity view on some topic. I think actually AI is really good at giving you that. If you want to like hone that in and kind of be like, okay, I kind of have this assumption. Let me test that out a little bit. let's say I have an assumption about like, I think these are the challenges that this particular type of person I'm trying to target and get in front of. These are the kinds of challenges that they have. Well, go ask AI, right? Now, it's not going to give you really interesting answers, but it's going to give you aggregate answers. I think that's a great way to use AI is kind of test things, hypothesize things, kind of like have a sounding board of like, okay, I have an assistant who has access to like a lot of information, right? Now it can't give me like really specific answers. It can't go like, be like, okay, what's the smartest answer to this question or the most nuanced answer? But I can at least get the aggregate answer. And so if you're using it as a research tool, test hypotheses, maybe generate like an initial idea or like a sounding board for an idea that you have, right? I think one of my favorite things to do with AI in terms of like content generation is like ask it a question and give me 10 answers to this or 10 things. And then I say, great, give me 10 more. Great.
Yep.
Give me 10 more. And by the time I'm at like 30, 40, 50, then I might get something that's actually interesting, maybe. Because it's like, by that point, it's like really digging. And there's times I've actually like, I took it to 100 on like one question and it's just stopped. It like ChatGPT quit on me at 75, like answer number 75. It was just like, I can't do it. And it was like, I'm probably a little bit notorious in our organization for saying this, but like, I feel like, ChatGPT or maybe Copilot, some of these other like kind of basic content AI tools are probably as good as a college intern. Like, they have a wider breadth of things to pull from than a college intern. And they're certainly a lot faster than a college intern at like getting an answer. But the answers you're going to get back are like, yeah, that's what I would kind of expect from someone who's just on the internet researching for 4 hours a question and spitting back answers to me. And even then, I think probably if you had a college intern spend 4 hours on one question, they'd probably, if they're like halfway smart and good at like kind of being inquisitive, would probably come back with some interesting answers that, a chat GPT or Copilot's never going to give you.
So kind of like, made me think of sometimes I'll use it I'll think of, okay, before I look at anything, because there's a phenomenon in creative work where, or in just, I don't know, cognitive psychology or something, where there's top down processing and bottom up. And so if you're like scrolling the internet, you're doing bottom up processing, you're responding to stimuli, right? Top down is where you're like trying to solve a problem, and that problem is something you own in your head. And so a lot of times, in order to take advantage of top down processing, where it's going to be more original, is I'll write my list, and then I'll say, okay, once I'm done with my list, I'll ask GPT to say, all right, what am I missing? Because it's pretty well rounded. It's going to give you some of those things you forgot about, and you're like, duh. Someone like me is like really useful for.
Yep. Yeah, I even get concerned with like people who use it to like build an outline from scratch. It's like, hey, write me an outline on this topic. I'm curious like how far you can take that before it's very derivative of a lot of other articles, or like pretty soon it's like everybody in your industry is writing that same outline because they're all using the same tool to like generate it. It might have like slightly different wording and stuff, or like certainly if you take an editing pass on it, maybe you'll massage it and it won't be like incredibly apparent on the first pass that like, oh, this is the same article. But you're only going to get so many variations on it. We've even seen like, we've taken podcast transcripts that I thought had really interesting kind of little bites in them, right? Like little examples or metaphors or case study type, facts and figures type stuff that we know about, and we throw those in there in our conversation. And when we ask like a chat GPT or a Claude to go back and essentially write an article from this podcast, it loses all those things, like completely overwrites them. And yeah, the broad strokes of the article are in accordance with what we said in the podcast. It kind of follows a general outline, but it loses all of the like really specific, interesting things that I think make for really great content. And I do wonder, like, you know, we get another year down the road. It's like, how many pieces of content do all these companies create that are just flat out AI generated?
Yeah.
And pretty soon it's like nobody's writing anything interesting anymore. And I think what you're going to do is train people just ignore all your content. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and on the technical side, we're already seeing that Google, YouTube, even Amazon is, I don't know if they're starting to filter it out, but they're asking about it. So like, for example, YouTube will ask, like, is there any AI generated or manipulated content in this video when you upload a video? I know Amazon, like we do some self-publishing through Amazon, they'll explicitly ask in the publishing process, is there any AI generated imagery or content? Is it, you know, heavy? Is it moderate? Is it light, or none at all? So they're starting to ask about these things. I would guess, you know, hey, YouTube, Google, Amazon, all these companies, these big tech companies, they want to give their customers, which by the way is not AI chatbots, it's real human people. They want to give real people the best content. So if they start to learn that humans do not prefer AI generated content, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be in trouble if you've been doing this for 2 to 3 years. Yeah. The other thing, kind of switching back to like, what would you use it for? I love using AI to help me think differently than I can think, right? Like you said, Mike, give me 10 more, give me 10 more, until you start to get into some things that just like, oh, I wouldn't have thought about that. And so for me, a lot of times it's like, man, I got to come up with a title for a blog post. Hey, here's all the content. Give me 30 out of the box, you know, interesting or creative. And almost every time there's not a single line where I'm like, oh, that's it perfectly. But I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And that second one, oh, number 28 is really interesting. There's some interesting things in there that I wouldn't have thought of. And then you, as the human, you can curate those things and start to piece them together. And I've had some, I mean, it takes a lot of the time out of like what is going to be the most interesting part of this blog post, and how do I put that into a title, right? How do I get people to be interested in the content I've just generated? And I think AI does a really good job if you kind of learn how to ask it the right questions and to just maybe keep pressing it, like, give me some more, make it more like this, give it more of this touch.
I think that's a really good point, because when you think about writing, and when I think about journalism, Sam, you and I both went to a journalism school. A lot of it's about asking good questions, right? It's asking the right questions, and also seeing points of tension where you're like, okay, that seems suspicious. Even in brand workshops, we do that, and it helps our clients, right? Because we're seeing things that don't seem to agree, that we see because we're looking for them, but maybe the client doesn't see because it's just like, well, it's just what you do, right? And so that helps us really find things that are interesting. I think the same thing is true with writing articles when you're thinking about your persona. Like if you haven't given AI, the AI your persona, or even if you have, they're not going to be able to really sympathize with the person. They don't know that person, right? That you're writing to, but you do, and you have that in your mind. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, you're reading the article that was generated or the outline or whatever. And you're saying, okay, yeah, I guess that sort of is it, but it's not completely it. How would I explain this to my uncle? And who is the persona? Who is this is the guy I picture when I picture this persona, right? How would I explain this to Uncle Joe or whatever? And now you're getting really conversational in your brain. And even your questions as you look at these things are going to get a lot more conversational. You're going to be like, yeah, Uncle Joe, yeah, he sort of cares about this, but here's what he really cares about, right? And now you have a great question to ask AI.
Yeah, and I think that's even there's like within that idea is that there is a flaw even with a persona, right? Even better than a persona is an actual person. Like if I can have a specific client in mind when I'm writing, man, I can get even more specific than I can with a kind of somewhat abstracted, broader persona, because there's a level of just like, it's just not specific as as specific as a singular human being that I can talk to and I can think about, like you just said with your uncle Chris, like your uncle in a way like you're just not going to know your persona. I would even argue like make your persona as tight as a single like person, right? Like make it that tight. And yeah, maybe you can use that with AI and feed it some of that information. I personally still think that AI is going to abstract that. I think it's going to get derivative pretty quickly, no matter what you plug into it, only because the way that it thinks is not, it's not a person. It can't really think about anyone. It can't think about even what you gave it. All it's doing is like a giant word association cloud. That's what it's doing, and doing probabilities of word associations.
Yeah.
So it's just going like, hey, I've been fed all these pieces of words that flow together. I expect to see this kind of answer when you ask this question with these words in it, right?
Right.
It's not cognitively understanding, oh, what kind of person are you trying to talk to? It's just going like, okay, let me go to my bank of data and go, okay, you said accountant. Okay, so what content surrounds the word accountant, right? And then what content surrounds these additional pieces of information that you're going to give me in your prompt in order to generate this. So it's
Yeah.
only as good essentially as the specificity of the data it already has and what you give it.
Yeah. I saw this quote. AI is no smarter than your toaster. It was in a like a Cambridge conversation about AI or something like that.
Makes
And
me
you're
sound really
making me
generous, making it sound like a college intern.
a toaster. Maybe a toaster could be your intern, depending on the quality for your recruiting. But
Would you
My
rather have
toaster at home.
Would you rather have a toaster or AI? You can only have
or the
one.
president, a toaster
Dude,
could be the president.
I'm not giving up
All
my
right, anyway,
toaster,
I'm
man.
not
I
giving up
love
my
toast too
toaster.
much. I love
right
toast
in,
too
Toast.
much.
right in candidate. Um, so yeah, so you made me think like we don't understand how humans look at their sense of self or a relationship with other people. We sort of do, but how do you program a computer or an AI? How do you set up something like that that's going to understand those relationships? It's going to be very low resolution. It's just going to be very ham-handed, demographic driven rather than a feel of that person, how you would interact with that person there in front of you. When would you smile? How would you shake that hand, or give that hug or whatever? There's just like there's
Yeah, because
just no
AI
way,
can't.
right?
AI cannot meet with your clients. You
No.
can't You can't outsource, the Zoom calls with your clients. AI can be integrated into that, but you can't take AI with you to inbound and meet with, your friends or your potential clients or your current clients. It doesn't learn like you do with human interactions and human learning. Every time we meet with somebody in person or even on a Zoom call or a phone call, we learn something new about them. Oh, this person likes Taylor Swift. Oh, that's really interesting. It just reshapes a little bit about that person you're talking to, and
Mhm.
it just continuously kind of feeds that persona in your mind.
Yep. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Have you guys ever asked AI to do like make a joke or have a sense of humor about a topic?
No, I don't believe in jokes or humor. Puns, definitely. I don't like those.
But you do believe in
So,
sarcasm,
what is sarcasm?
apparently.
Anyone that knows me, I love all those things. No, I don't. I don't think I've ever done that. I don't. I've done that to like Siri, those kinds of things.
Mm.
But I saw. I have seen there was a. This was like a year ago, I think. There was a guy who entered a joke, like a stand-up comedy contest, and he entered it as a representative of an AI bot, where he basically said, "I'm not going to write any jokes. I'm just going to give you jokes that the bot gives me as I type them in, and see how far I can get in the contest." And it was like an epic fail from the standpoint of humor. Like they were not funny. Like now, this was a year ago. Maybe they're a little bit better now. Maybe there's like an AI bot that's a little bit more trained on jokes. Um, but like it just really struggled. It really struggled, and it was very interesting to see kind of like kind of get behind like, okay, how does an AI like think, quote unquote. But
Yep.
I love this conversation. I think we're going to have to do at least another episode. There's probably a bunch more episodes on AI coming up. But I think this was a really good starting point for us to kind of talk about like the pitfalls of AI, some of the challenges with it, the edges of where it's useful. But I think our next one should really be about, how can I use it? How can I leverage it to the best ability that I can, especially as a marketer in a professional services firm? How can I really leverage it well? So I don't know what you guys think, but that would be my proposition. Let's talk about that next time.
The Remarkable Brand Podcast is a project of Resound and is recorded in Gilbert, Arizona. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and at remarkablecast.com. If you'd like more episodes, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts. To contact the show, find out more about the Remarkable Brand Podcast, or to join our newsletter list to make sure you never miss another episode, check out our website at remarkablecast.com. Copyright Resound Creative Media, LLC.